Good morning, everybody. And even though I'm recording this a bit late, it is still good morning. I had a doctor's appointment this morning, early one, so I got up, took care of the animals, and I had to zip off there, and so I'm just getting around to doing this meditation. And by the way, does anybody know what the perfect blood pressure count is? You know, the reading. Do you know what the perfect blood pressure reading is? You're looking at it right here, buddy-o. 120/80. 120/80. Well, that's the ideal. That's the supposed mark to go for. But, yep, things are looking good. And I just need to keep up the good work the doctor said and still keep shedding a few pounds, and I'll be in good shape. So thank you all for your prayers. That go way back to January with my little fun episode. But here we are, July, doing just fine. And I wanted to talk a little bit about Numbers today. Not the book called Numbers, but Numbers in the Bible, especially when we get to the Psalms. Here's a word of warning. If your pastor or your Bible study leader happens to say, hey, we're going to do something fun today. Let's look at a psalm. Why don't we all just sit back and read Psalm 119? And you go, oh, that's cool. We love the Psalms. Let's do that. Yeah, we'll read the Psalm 119 and talk about it. Be careful. It's 176 verses long. The longest chapter in the Bible, verse-wise. 176 verses. How did it get so long? Do you remember way back when we talked about another psalm and we said that it was an acrostic psalm? And some of you know what it means when we say acrostic. It means you take the letters of a word and from there you form other things like a sentence or a nice little piece of poetry or whatever. Well, that acrostic psalm that we talked about before took the letters of the Hebrew alphabet and started each verse with a letter of the Hebrew alphabet right in order from start to finish. Well, Psalm 119 does the same thing, only it has its emphasis, the Torah, or the law of Moses, the law that the people built their lives around. And the reason it has so many verses, each letter was given 8 verses. And not only that, each verse had to start with that letter. So you have, let's just say it's all in English, A to Z. The first verse, every single line begins with A in the first 8 verses. The next 8 verses, every single line begins with B. Then the next, all the way through to Z. And they all talk about God's law. I know this would have been something to keep in mind for Coffee Shop Thursday. So maybe you might want to just throw it out there sometime if you're talking about the Psalms. Yeah, the longest chapter in the Bible is an acrostic psalm talking about God's law. And again, if you don't have any coffee cups thrown at you at that point, consider yourself fortunate and blessed by God. All right, what about this Psalm 119? You see, this Sunday coming up, it's one of the Psalms that we can be reading from, and we're reading from the part that begins with the Hebrew letter Pei. And so all 8 verses start with Pei, but they still focus on God's law. Your decrees, meaning God's law, are wonderful. Therefore, my soul keeps them. The unfolding of your words, God's law, gives light. It imparts understanding to the simple. I love this one right here. With open mouth I pant because I long for your commandments. That's the image of a dog who's been outside running in the 90-degree temperatures, running for the water bowl. I can hardly wait to get to it. We can hardly wait to get to God's law. Now, you might be looking at me right now and going, that's not what I've been taught all along. I've been taught that the law, that was the old way that the people lived, beginning with Moses and right up to the New Testament. And we don't go by the law anymore. We go by love and grace and what Jesus had to say to us. Well, yeah, that's true. But Jesus lived by the law. Jesus said that he came to fulfill the law and the prophets. Not do away with it. Fulfill it. Bring it to its fullness. Really show us how to live it. If we look at the Torah, or the law of God as it's written in the Hebrew Scriptures, it's not meant to be something to be overbearing and put a heavy burden on our shoulders and push us down into the ground. It's meant to lift us up, to live in the light of God's goodness and God's grace. If you really want to get serious, you've got to read the entire 176 verses of Psalm 119. And it would probably be a good bet to have a good Bible commentary by your side. You see, once again, this is one of those Psalms that have a lot of Hebrew words in there that we're really not sure how to translate it. So you might pick it up in the King James Version, and it says it different from the Revised Standard Version, that says it different from the New American Standard, on and on and on, because we just don't know. But we get a good feel for what's going on. And that feeling is God's law is a light to our path. It is meant to bring us hope and renew our spirits in those times when we're really feeling down. It's not meant to be a burden. It's meant to be love and grace. Well, have a good week. Hopefully your numbers when you go to the doctor are just as good as mine. I'm not trying to brag about it, but I'm just happy that I'm in the place where I am right now. And I'm just going to continue to work hard, get my exercise, keep eating right, minus the hot fudge sundae from last night. And, things will be okay. In the meantime, take a look at Psalm 119. Start with verse 129 through 136. That's the ones we'll be reading this week in church. And see what God has to say to you and to me about His Word, His law, His decrees. God's blessings be with you.